I'm going to talk about 5 reasons that I'm really excited for Shatterpoint now that I've seen the demo games and that I've read through the rules in depth. Now, the first reason is because I think there is some real innovation in the rules themselves. Now, I've wrote some kind of points here to jog my memory here, but some of the things that I've seen in the rules that I think is, they're not necessarily unique, but to get all of these things together in one game gives some real innovation to the way the game plays. When you take a model out, if you kill an enemy's model, or you basically kind of wound it enough so that it basically becomes wounded, it's not taken out until it's activated the next turn. So it's at the end of your activation that you check for kind of how much damage you've got on the model. So what that means is that there's none of this like one shot, taking the model off the board, completely done, I've spent ages painting it, I never got to do anything with it kind of thing. You at least get to activate the model before you then count up how much damage it has on. So there's none of this kind of like sort of alpha strike type stuff. If I hit you, you get the opportunity to hit me back before you basically become injured or whatever, which I think is a really unique thing. There's a constant rotation of your order deck, so basically no matter how many minis you have left on the board, you never get out activated. So for some games you will say, well, you've got 3 minis left and I've got 1 miniature left, so you activate 1, I activate 1, and then you get to go twice more with your 2 minis that you've got left, and then we go back to the start again. The way Shatterpoint works is however many minis you've got, you have that many cards in your order deck, and when your order deck is empty, you reshuffle it, you refill all of your focus points, and then you draw another card again. So if you've only got 1 model left, you will just keep activating that model. I'll activate my model, you activate one of yours, I'll activate the same model again, you activate one of yours, I'll activate the same model again, and that way you never get out activated. So when you may have less models on the board for grabbing objectives, but you don't get out activated to the point where you just feel like you're just sitting there being kind of piled upon by the enemy. Another thing is the abilities become more costly in force tokens as you become damaged, and I think this is a good way to show fatigue rather than basically limiting what a model can do. So models can still do all of their different abilities during an activation, but as they take more damage, the cost to do those abilities becomes more expensive. And I think that's a really good way of kind of allowing you to have choice, but limiting that choice as you're basically becoming fatigued. Everyone moves the same distance. It doesn't matter what your model is. Everybody uses the same movement tool. So it's one less stat to worry about, and about sort of how this model's much faster than mine, and that model's across the board in turn 1, but mine's really slow kind of coming across. Everybody basically activates the same movement distance. There's something called a tactic symbol. And this tactic symbol is on some of the order cards. So each character, if you like, each model has an order card, and this is what we draw from the deck to see which model will activate. And some of them have a tactic symbol in the top left-hand corner. And that is just there as a nice kind of ease of life feature to basically say, by the way, when you activate this model, it has something on its card that happens as you activate it. The first thing you do as you activate it, this tactic basically happens, and it's just a nice little thing that a lot of games wouldn't do. You would have to kind of memorize what your models do. I just love the fact that they've thought about putting this little thing in it, and the fact that it is random activation through that order deck, basically kind of like shuffling through it. It's something that adds to the game, but like with the ability to balance this with things like the Shatterpoint card and putting a unit into reserve. So let me explain what I mean by that. You have a deck of order cards of all the different models in your unit that you can activate, but it's random which model is going to activate next. So you draw a card from that deck, and that's the model you can activate. However, you can put that card into reserve and pull the next card and activate that instead. And then at some point later, you can go back and use that card you've put in reserve. So it is a way that basically if there's something you want to do with a particular model, but you don't want to do it right at the start of the order, if you like, there is a way to do that. Also in that deck is a Shatterpoint card. And that Shatterpoint card allows you to activate any of the models that you have on the table. but it is not activating it and then it's done for the rest of the game. It's given any of the models a second activation, which I think is something really unique. So the randomization of stuff, I think, is really cool, but the fact that there are some stuff in there which allow you to control that, I think is pretty cool too. So that's a very long way of telling you the first thing that I think is interesting, but there are some really unique rules, I think, in this game. The second one is the fact that it's a really low model count game, and I think that's great for new players just getting started. The game plays roughly, give or take, as some kind of support units might be 2 models, but it roughly plays with between 6 and 8 models per side. Let's ignore the core set for a second, but that comes in with enough for a full game for 2 players. But if you just wanted to get into it, not with the core set, you buy a couple of boxes and you're ready to go. You can mix and match them later on as you buy extra units, but if you buy a couple of boxes of the different character packs, you're good to go. So you can just jump in with the models that you like the look of. The fact that you can kind of mix and match them is something extra as well, but I think it's a relatively low model count. It's manageable to build and paint, and that you can get them to the table relatively fast. The third thing that I think is really cool and I'm excited about is the fact that there is no point cost in setting up a game. So in most games, you would say, let's say like 40k, we're going to pay 2,000 points. In Marvel Crisis Protocol, you have to kind of adjust your list building to like work out which of the different crisis cards you're going to pick. The mission cards, is it going to be a 16-point game? Is it going to be a 19-point game? And you have to build your teams like that. The way this game works is you take your primary model. So let's say that Darth Maul or Lord Maul, as he's called, is your primary model. He comes with a point cost. I think off the top of my head, that might be 8 points. And that means that he can take 8 points of models with him to buy a secondary unit and to buy a support unit. And that's it. So some models will get to bring more points with them. Some models will get to bring less points with them. But the balance is in the rules and the abilities and the amount of force points that they bring with them. The game balances out that way. So there is no point cost to the game. There is just a leader brings a cost that he can then recruit, and then he can spend that many points to bring his secondary unit and his support unit. And that's it. So there's none of this kind of sort of fancy list building sort of to worry about. It's really, really straightforward. The fourth thing is that height matters. And what I mean by that is the height of terrain. So many games are really played like on a flat plane surface, where terrain is generally there to kind of just get in the way a little bit or to look pretty. But I think in Shatterpoint, terrain height is going to be really important, very much like it is in games like Dead Zone. I would say that the rules have been written with this in mind as well, so that how you can traverse up kind of ingress points like ladders and lifts and things like that very easily, the way you can basically jump down from certain heights, the way you can jump up certain heights. The rules have all been written with this terrain in mind. However, in some games like Infinity and Dead Zone to an extent, if you're out in the open, you will be punished for it, where Shatterpoint doesn't feel like that so much. Infinity especially works really great with lots of sort of vertical terrain and lots of kind of blocking line of sight, but it's essentially there for you to move across the board to dodge behind. In Shatterpoint, it feels like you're much more traversing it. It's got that feeling of jumping around through different heights, very much like the cartoons, very much like the movies, where you've got Jedis backflipping off the tops of buildings and things. It feels very cinematic in its approach. The fifth thing is that the game is based around objectives and not just killing each other. The characters can last quite a while in the game. It takes quite a bit of effort to be able to wipe a player completely off the board, and you will be really focusing upon kind of getting the objective, getting the scenario, and trying to win the game with points like that, not just sort of fighting against your enemy. It also means that if you spent ages building and painting your miniatures, they're not going to be one-shotted off the board on the first turn kind of thing. They're going to be sticking around for quite some time. Now, the sixth one, a bonus one as well, I know I said 5, but I'm going to give you a bonus one on the end as well, is the struggle tracker. Now, this isn't something that we see in a lot of games, but I think it's a great addition, and it's something that you'll have to keep a close eye on the game, because I can see, especially in the early days, what will happen is you think you've got this game in the bag. You'll be thinking, if I do this and, if I go over there and I try and take him out, I'll be able to win this kind of thing. And you won't take into consideration the fact that your opponent, all they need to do is get to that objective, score the point at the end of their turn, and the tracker basically moves onto their side and maxes out and wins. The struggle tracker is a really, really clever addition, and I think without it, this would still be a decent game where you're just racking up points, and like the way Marvel Crisis Protocol works, where basically the first to 16 points is the winner kind of thing. The fact that you're pulling and pushing on this struggle tracker, constantly trying to kind of not only score points, but pull the win back from your opponent as well, I think is going to be really, really interesting and add lots of cool stuff to the game. So what kind of stuff are you excited about? Is there anything that you've read in the rules that you think is going to kind of really make this the game that you want to play? Is there anything you've read in the rules where you think, that's absolutely turned me off to the game, I'm not interested in this? I'd love to know what you think.